Hi. Here in Australia, where I live, skin cancers are pretty common. Lots of people get them. Sometimes they're really serious ones, like melanoma. And if they're untreated, of course, this can kill you. But most people get by in Australia by just getting various skin cancers burned off by going to a skin specialist or a skin doctor on a regular basis. And I fall into that category. Once a year I go along and I'm checked out, and I have a few blemishes burned off and so forth. Now, why am I telling you this? It's because of a conversation I heard between the telephonist, that's the receptionist, and someone else. I couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but I gleaned what was going on. After I'd had my examination and got dressed and was getting ready to pay my bill, I heard the telephonist talking to another client, and she was saying like, "Oh no, you'll have to go down to Wollongong, or maybe up to Newcastle. Oh, you live on the Central Coast. Well, I guess we could fit you in, but it's a long trip." Now, why am I telling you this? Well, it's all about when you decide to leave your family home, you're retired, and downsize. So many people have this dream of downsizing to the countryside, or getting a sea change. In other words, moving away from their city location or their big town location to something smaller, a little intimate village somewhere. And it seems so appealing. The problem is this: if you retire around about your late 50s, early 60s, it's going to be wonderful there for a little while. But then old age creeps in, and you've got to see various specialists. You might have to see a skin doctor, you might have to see a urologist, you might have to see a heart specialist, you might have to see any manner of specialists. And in your town, your new town, if you're lucky, you might have a general practitioner. You mightn't even have that. Point is, when you have to see a specialist, what are you going to do? Commute? By train? By car? It isn't always easy. You could live in Australia anyway, which is a big country. You could live 100 miles away from the nearest specialist, and he asked you to come in and see him next week and the week after that. You see the point I'm trying to make? When you downsize, think very carefully. Am I going to be able to live in this new location, away from the big city where I've been brought up, or perhaps living for years? Am I going to be able to do that once I get into my late 70s and 80s? My advice would be this: if you're going to downsize and you really want to do it, it's essential, downsize to a location close to where you are living at the present, so that you know the same shopping centres, the same roads, and even the same people. Because when you go somewhere different, completely different, you've got to make new friends, you've got to work out the geographics of the new place. There's all manner of challenges which might sound exciting, but you could find yourself very lonely too. Because where you've been living, you mightn't have built a lot of close friendships, but you built friendships. The people at the coffee shop knows you, the people at the baker knows you, the people at the grocery store where you go. Your face is familiar to them, and their faces are familiar to you. You might exchange a few words when you see them. They're not close friends, but they are acquaintances. If you move away, you have to start anew. It can be quite lonely. Does someone have your back out there at the new location? Could you call someone up in the middle of the night and have them call around in a few minutes if something seriously goes wrong? These are the things you've got to think about. Okay, so you want to see the sea. You want to go on a trip. Do all these things. You don't have to buy at that location. Go on holiday, rent, test it out. Once you've made a commitment, sold your home, your family home, and moved maybe 200 or 300 miles from where you're living now, you can't get back into the city. The house prices keep going up. You can no longer afford to get back to where you used to live. I hope this doesn't sound too pessimistic, but the point is, I know when my wife and I retired, we thought about going to other places. So what actually happened? When we downsized, we probably moved about 3 kilometres from where we'd been living before. We left the family home and we got a townhouse, a fairly nice, roomy townhouse with little maintenance to do. And everything around us still remained fairly familiar. We didn't have to lose friends. We didn't have to leave clubs that we might belong to and so forth. Think very carefully. That sea change, that country change, that mountain change that you think so longingly about before you retire might not be so good when you actually take it on. I hope you got something from this one.